Well, good morning, good afternoon everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. I apologise, we're a couple of minutes late. We just had a little bit of a technical issue getting up and running, but we're all here now. My name is Andy Osborne. I'm Director of Global Business Development for CA Experts, and today's webinar is titled Robust and Effective Work Sharing for PDS Projects with XpertSync. I will be joined later by Dmitry Sigalov, who's our lead software architect and was one of the key people behind this solution, and he should be able to answer any technical questions that we have as we go forward. Okay, so in terms of the agenda, we're going to go through this brief introduction. We're then going to look at a number of aspects of XpertSync, starting with the history, then giving you a general overview, and then looking at the various different aspects of work sharing within the system itself. We're then going to look at licensing and some potential areas for return on investment. We're going to summarize everything, and then I want to just get a little bit of feedback from you with a few questions, and then at the very end we go into audience questions. So please feel free to fill in the question panel and ask questions. We'll save those up to the end and go through them one by one. The session should last around about 30 minutes plus questions, and we will be recording the session, so it will be available for viewing after this live session is finished. Okay, so I'm going to now move on. So let's just consider what the history of XpertSync is. We actually originally developed this in 2007, so it's not a new product at all. This is something that's been in use for quite some time. It's been in continual production use since its development, in fact, with Bechtel. And Bechtel have very kindly provided us some further information that we can share with you about their use. And so since the creation of XpertSync, as you can see, Bechtel has been using it for 7 years. This is on 28 major contracts with an overall value of approximately 35 billion US dollars. That has encompassed more than 40 PDS 3D projects involving more than 71 workshare site activations and connecting 16 global design execution centers with 5 joint ventures. So very heavily used. I think they're fairly impressive figures that Bechtel have provided. It's primarily used within their organization to quickly and easily establish global workshare of PDS 3D projects. It maintains the integrity and accuracy of the 3D design across all locations and throughout the life cycle of the project. It provides flexibility for management to change the scope of the workshare and even move the design ownership to the best suited resource. So depending on where your best team is, you can choose to change that focus. It ensures that all design is consistent across all locations on the same project, and it enables you to manage the workshare of 3D models, drawings, clash settings and RDBs. In terms of the benefits that Bechtel has realized, they've realized major savings by being able to engage most cost-effective design teams at short notice, to reduce the demand for PDS administrators to a minimum, improve schedules and reduce errors related to workshare design misalignment. It makes workshare faster and easier to deploy and, more importantly, to monitor so that you understand exactly where you're at any one point in time. It allows workshare with joint ventures or remote locations. It ensures consistent design rules across design execution centers on the same project and provides a multi-office interference detection capability. Now I'll explain a bit more about that as we go forward. It gives you consistency with the PDS, ISOs and orthos, including orthogen drawing setups, and provides extensive accessible workshare status reports across sites. It provides a very simple but controlled mechanism for switching PDS model drawing design ownership. So, thanks for Bechtel for allowing us to share that with you, but that gives you some idea or some insight as to the use for Bechtel. Okay, so coming back to the history, up until this point, we haven't made XpertSync commercially available. Having said that, we were approached around about 12 months ago by Jacobs Engineering, and we managed to broker a deal with them, and they became the second user to adopt XpertSync. So then we have 2 users that are using this globally. So just recently we've made the decision to make the solution generally available, and that is the whole purpose behind this webinar. So that gives you a little bit of a history background as to where we're coming from. So let's now take a look at XpertSync itself. One of the key issues that we've certainly seen is that you have this synchronization window if you use a traditional approach. And in simple terms, you're executing a project across the globe. You may want one office to synchronize with another, and typically that project synchronization must be completed within a certain time period to avoid delaying the team at the next location. Of course, if you don't manage to complete that synchronization within that time, you will incur delays and hold up that design team from doing their useful work until the synchronization is complete. And that really is not an acceptable way of moving forward. So what is XpertSync? Well, firstly, it synchronizes PDS projects located on different sites. It uses a central repository, and that repository can either be a Windows share or an FTP server. From an administration point of view, it's got a very easy to use graphic user interface, and it can be accessible from any internet capable device. What it synchronizes is models, that's the piping, equipment, frameworks, raceways, HVAC and non-PDS models, PDS drawings, the piping RDB, equipment RDB, frameworks, raceway, HVAC, drawings, isogen, orthogen, and the clash database, including marker files. It does provide major savings for work-shared PDS projects in many areas. It eases the PDS expert resource demand, so it's much simpler to administer and requires less intervention as you're using it. It enables you to meet and exceed the scheduled target dates. It's fully flexible. It's an easy-to-use PDS workshare management system. It promotes an accurate model and PDS drawings, reference catalogues, etc., and distribution that is timely for space management during design. From a graphic user interface point of view, it enables you to monitor via the report module the current status of workshare processes at all sites. It saves reports to Microsoft Excel, and it filters the scope of PDS projects to individual sites. You can also switch the site ownership of the model and drawing objects, and again I'll explain a little bit more about what we mean with that. It is a hub and spoke solution, so it gives you a very simple setup that scopes and controls the satellite setups themselves. It's self-contained and reliable, so it minimizes dependencies on other processes. It allows workshare of individual PDS drawings, and it doesn't use the NT batch or PDS archiving as a mechanism for working. The design team ownership is easily moved, so if you have one particular office where you want them to be in control of the equipment, another in control of the piping, this is easily done. It also removes the need to schedule in line with system uptime, so this synchronization window requirement disappears because of the way it operates. And of course, it overcomes the timeline overlap constraints for things like the Oracle, the files, PDS and CPU. It provides quick and simple feedback in terms of object workshare status, and it's easy to appraise quality and completeness of the model per site. It provides a continuous workshare capability, so it's running 24/7. Precise scheduling events is not required, and if there is a breakage in the network, you don't have to restart and resynchronize everything. It will recover automatically from that network breakage. It very much reduces the administrator involvement. There is no blocking of PDS licenses while it's running. And if there is a CAD file that's been manipulated, it is sensitive to that as well. It synchronizes also the model and drawing secondary properties such as descriptions, model status, design area ownership, etc. I've got some graphics coming up, so I apologize for all the text, but just bear with us. Secure encrypted object zipping involving smaller data sets. It provides for filtering to cut back exposure of sensitive objects at satellite sites. So if you don't want certain sites to see certain objects, you can filter those out and not expose them. You have pre- and post-processing options that allow more automation options to be introduced. The RDB and associated data synchronization is not just for piping, but all other disciplines, with the ability to host each one from a different site. And you can change the roles mid-project, and you can move the hub to another location on site. It's not a problem to just do this. And we've had tentative discussions with some people where they've said, well, we've already started a project. Could we actually implement this on a project that we've already started? And the answer is yes, and it wouldn't take very long at all to get that implemented and up and running. But what you do need is this FTP Secure Hub to act as a host for all work-sharing PDS projects, either that or a Windows share. So let's now look at how it works, and let's start with the project data work share. And for this, what we've got is an example of 4 particular sites that are executing projects, and we have this central FTP server, which acts as our hub. So where we have P effectively means that this is the primary location, and so we've nominated site 1 as the primary location for the project administration. Effectively, to keep all of this in sync, what XpertSync does is moves that information out to the central hub and then takes it from that hub out to the individual sites, and so that keeps everything synchronized and up to date. When we start looking at the model data, this operates in very much the same way. So in this case, each one of these sites is a different color, and each one of these sets of models and drawings is a corresponding color to the particular site. So if we consider site 1 as a starting point, for all of these other sites to be synchronized with what's going on in site 1, what happens is that gets copied out to the central hub, and then from the central hub it goes out to the individual sites. And the same happens with site 2. So site 2 goes to the central hub and then out to these individual satellites. Similarly, site 3 does the same, and site 4 does exactly the same as that. So what we end up with is a completely synchronized set of model data and drawings. The RDB side of it works in exactly the same way. Except in this case, what we've got are different primary locations for different RDBs. So for example, for equipment piping drawings in Isogen and Orthogen, that's hosted, or the primary site is site 1. So that gets copied out to the hub and then out to the satellites from there. For the frameworks, we can see that this is hosted on site 2. Sorry, not frameworks. Raceways on site 3, and so on. So as you can see, we've got different disciplines hosting different, being hosted at different sites. Excuse me. When we consider the clash data, this works slightly differently, in so much as we have one primary site for doing the collision detection. But then what we're doing is we are allowing the individual satellites to do their review and approvals, but then we synchronize that back to the primary site. So you can basically devolve that clash checking to the relevant sites that are responsible for it. And in a simple kind of workflow, maybe not simple, but this is more diagrammatic of how everything fits together. So what we've got is site A and site B. We've got basically the PDS installation here, and we're using backup and restore here, and then using a file transfer system to go between the satellites to the hub and from the hub out to the satellites. And this runs continuously, so it's looking for objects or files that have changed. And when it has a different date or revision on that, basically it will try and synchronize it. So it's working continuously, which means that you don't have a big chunk of work to do at a particular time. And it will just keep running and running and running. So if there is a network breakage, it will auto recover. From a licensing point of view, when we decided to make this commercially available, we're licensing it on an annual lease basis only. So anybody who's interested, basically you pay an annual fee. We recognize that PDS maybe is not going to be running for too many more years. So leasing it means that when you've finished with that PDS and hopefully you've moved on to the Smart 3D platform, you can just basically not renew the lease. Therefore, there is no perpetual license to worry about. This annual lease provides you with the ability to run unlimited numbers of projects for synchronization across unlimited sites. And yes, we'll allow that to work with JVs, and anybody who's part of your project can benefit from working with this. So from a return on investment point of view, and again, this is not complete, but what it is, it's a set of points that you just need to think about that will probably give you a very fast return on investment right out the gate. So firstly, one of the big savings is in administrator time, because it dramatically reduces the admin time required to keep locations and projects synchronized. And in certain companies we've spoken to, they have told us that their estimate is something like 1 to 2 man years every year that they can save on the admin time. So one calculation would be the number of admin hours that you think you can save multiplied by the hourly rate, and that will give you some element of cost saving on its own. The next one is project design hours, and again we have spoken with companies where we do know that designers have been locked out of the model during the synchronization process, and so instead of starting at maybe 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, sometimes it could be up until lunchtime. So that's maybe half a day of production lost because of this. The XpertSync would completely eliminate these delays. So the calculation would be how many design hours are you currently losing or locking, and look at that in terms of a multiplier of the hourly rate by the number of man hours, and again that will give you a reasonable figure, and probably these two alone will make this a very positive return on investment within the first 12 months. Of course, there are other parameters. I mean, if you are making decisions taken on data that is not up to date, and that could be the fact that you are issuing ISOs for fabrication when there are still collisions or there's other design work going on that would affect that, then that's going to be very costly to put right. And so again, there are elements of this rework or poor decisions based on out-of-date data that you can also take into account. And there may be many other topics that you can consider that you'll probably know better than I will, but these are just a few pointers. So to summarize, what we can see with XpertSync is that it will deliver major savings for work-shared PDS projects. It gives you a continuous work-share capability. It reduces the administrator involvement, and it gives you that ability to change the design team ownership very straightforwardly. It removes the need to schedule in line with system uptimes because it's just a continuous process that it's executing. It overcomes these timeline overlap constraints. It's simple, it's robust, and it provides a good return on investment.